Imagine this. A little boy, the son of a millionaire, is playing on the floor when he notices something no child should ever see. His beloved Maid, the woman who cared for him like family, hides her arm, but not fast enough. Beneath her sleeve are bruises. Dark, undeniable, impossible to ignore. In that moment, everything changes. What the boy does next will shock everyone and reveal a truth that no amount of money could ever keep hidden. The afternoon sun streamed softly into the spacious living room of a suburban home in Connecticut. 8-year-old Samuel was on the carpet with his toy trucks when his eyes caught something unusual. "Daddy, she's hurt!" Samuel shouted, pointing at the arm of Carolina, the young woman who had been helping take care of the house and him. The sleeve of her blouse had slipped when she bent to pick up a toy, revealing Bruises' dark, finger-shaped marks that couldn't be mistaken. Carolina tugged the fabric back down quickly, panic in her eyes. "It's nothing, Samuel. I just hit a door." From his armchair, Bruno closed his book. His face hardened, and he stood walking toward her. "Carolina, let me see your arm." She froze. "Mr. Bruno, it's fine, really, just an accident. Let me see." "Now." Samuel looked back and forth between them, confused. Carolina hesitated, but something in Bruno's voice left no room for defiance. Slowly she rolled up the sleeve. The bruises told the truth. They weren't from bumping into a door. They were the marks of violence, fingers pressed cruelly into skin. Bruno's jaw tightened. "Who did this to you?" "No one," she whispered. "I swear, it's nothing. Don't lie to me." "Someone hurt you." "Who was it?" Samuel crept closer, gently touching her arm. "Does it hurt?" She forced a smile, though her eyes brimmed with tears. "Not anymore, sweetheart." Bruno crouched beside her, his voice softer but firm. "You can trust me. No one's going to hurt you here." "Tell me what happened." Her control shattered. She broke into tears. "It was my ex-husband. He found me yesterday when I was walking home." Rage flashed in Bruno's eyes. "Your ex-husband? He doesn't accept that we're over. He says I'll always belong to him." "How long since the separation?" 2 months. "I ran away and got this job a month ago. I thought he wouldn't find me." Samuel wrapped his little arms around Carolina's leg. "The bad man can't hurt you, Carolina." Bruno looked at the boy, then back at her. "Samuel, go to your room for a bit. Daddy needs to talk to Carolina alone, but I want to stay. Go, son. You'll come back later." When Samuel left, Carolina whispered through trembling lips, "He said if I ever told anyone, he'd kill me." Bruno felt the words hit like a punch to the gut. He clenched his fists. "How long has he been doing this?" Carolina sank onto the couch, still shaking. "Since our first year of marriage. I was only 18. At first, it was just pushing. Then slaps. Then worse." "You never reported him?" Bruno asked. "How could I? He locked me in, wouldn't let me work, wouldn't let me have friends. And he always threatened my mom." "Your mom?" "She has heart problems. If anything happened to her." Her voice cracked. Bruno realized she had been a prisoner for years. "How did you escape?" "He went out of town. I grabbed clothes and ran. Stayed with a friend, then found this job. I thought I was safe." "And how did he find you?" "He has friends everywhere. Yesterday, he grabbed me at the bus stop. Dragged me into an alley. He said I was his property." "What's his name?" Bruno asked, pacing the floor with fury. Ethan Silva." Bruno stopped, his voice steady but burning. "Carolina, listen to me. No one owns you. This is America. What he's doing is a crime." Carolina lowered her head. "I know. But he'll never stop." At that moment, Samuel reappeared in the doorway, holding up a crayon drawing. "Carolina, look. It's for you." The picture showed 3 people holding hands under a sun. "My family" written in crooked letters. Carolina took the paper, hugging him tightly, tears falling. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen. That's you, me and Daddy," Samuel beamed. "Now you won't get hurt anymore, because we'll protect you." Bruno's chest ached. In just 1 month, this woman had captured his son's heart. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Samuel's right. We'll protect you, always." But then the doorbell rang. Hard, insistent, almost angry. Carolina's face drained of color. "It's him." The bell rang again, louder. Bruno looked at her sharply. "Take Samuel to the kitchen. Now, Mr. Bruno. Don't open, he'll go away. Go, I'll handle this." She grabbed Samuel's hand. "Come on, love. Let's make a snack." Bruno waited until they were gone. Then he walked to the door, peered through the peephole. A tall, gaunt man stood there, tattoos crawling up his neck, his face twisted with hostility. It was Ethan. Through the peephole, Bruno studied the man outside. Ethan Silva. Tall, wiry, with a long, angular face that carried a dangerous smirk. His eyes were sharp, restless, like a predator on the hunt. The tattoos climbing up his neck told their own story: violence, gangs, a past soaked in crime. He wasn't just an angry ex-husband. He was a threat in every sense. Bruno kept the chain latched and cracked the door just enough. His voice came firm, low. "What do you want?" Ethan leaned forward, his breath reeking of cigarettes and cheap liquor. "Where's Carolina?" "I know she's in there." Bruno didn't flinch. "There's no Carolina here," Ethan sneered, his teeth yellow. "Don't lie to me. I watched her walk in this morning. You think I'm stupid? She's mine. Always has been, always will be." Inside, Bruno's blood boiled. This man had stalked his house, watched his every move. He felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "You've got no right to be here. You've got no right to follow her. Got no right." Ethan laughed darkly. "She's my wife. Paper doesn't change that. She belongs to me." "Belongs?" Bruno spat the word back. "She's not property. She's free. And if you show up here again, I'll call the police." Ethan's smirk widened, his eyes glittering with menace. "Police? You think cops scare me? This is between me and my woman." Bruno's jaw tightened. He unlatched the chain and swung the door wide, stepping into the frame. He was taller, broader, stronger. For a moment, the two men locked eyes, one filled with arrogance, the other with controlled fury. "You listen to me," Bruno said, his voice deep and commanding. "Carolina is not your wife. She's not your property. If you ever lay a hand on her again, you'll answer to me. And if you show up here, you'll answer to the law." For the first time, Ethan's grin faltered. But it quickly turned into a snarl. "You don't know who you're dealing with. You're some rich boy from the suburbs. Out there," he pointed toward the street. "I grew up in places you wouldn't last 2 minutes. You think you can protect her from me? You're a joke." Bruno stepped closer, his voice low but deadly calm. "Try me." The silence between them was razor sharp. Ethan's jaw flexed. Then he backed away one slow step, but not in defeat, more like a snake retreating, waiting to strike another time. He laughed, the sound hollow. "Fine, I'll go. But you give her a message." "What message?" Bruno asked. Ethan's eyes burned with hate. "Tell her I'll be back. And when I come back, it won't be pretty." With that, he turned and swaggered toward a rusted old sedan parked crookily on the curb. Before sliding into the driver's seat, he shouted, voice echoing down the quiet street, "Carolina, I know you hear me. You'll never escape me. I'll be back for you." The car roared to life with a cloud of smoke, rattling off down the road. Bruno locked the door tight, checked the windows, and took a long breath to steady himself. The encounter had left him shaking with adrenaline. He turned toward the kitchen. There, Carolina sat at the table, Samuel perched on her lap. Both looked terrified. Samuel's small fingers clutched her blouse, his eyes wide. "He's gone," Bruno said softly. Carolina's lips trembled. "What did he say?" "That he'll be back." Tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered, "He never lets go." "He never will." Bruno stepped closer, resting a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Not this time. He's not taking you back to that nightmare." From the doorway, another voice entered. It was Ines, Bruno's mother-in-law, carrying grocery bags. Her sharp eyes immediately sensed the tension in the room. "What's going on here? Why do you all look like you've seen a ghost?" Bruno hesitated, glancing at Carolina, who shook her head subtly. "Not in front of Samuel." "Not yet." "Nothing," Bruno said. "We'll talk later." Samuel slid off Carolina's lap and ran to Ines. "Grandma, a bad man came." "Daddy sent him away," Ines frowned. "What bad man?" "Later," Bruno repeated, voice firm. After Samuel ran off to the living room with his crayons, Bruno told Ines the truth in low tones. It was Ethan, her ex-husband. "He came here. Threatened her. Threatened us." Ines's face darkened. "Oh my God, that poor girl." But in her heart, another thought whispered, "This woman is going to complicate everything." That night, after the house grew quiet and Samuel had gone to bed, Bruno found Carolina sitting alone in the small guest room. She was trembling, arms wrapped around herself, staring blankly at the floor. "You're not safe in that little apartment of yours," Bruno said, leaning against the doorframe. "Ethan knows where you live." Carolina looked up, her eyes red from crying. "I know, but I have nowhere else to go." Bruno stepped inside, lowering his voice. "Then stay here. This house has security, gates, alarms. He won't get in." Carolina's mouth fell open slightly. "Stay here?" "Mr. Bruno, I can't accept that. People will talk." "Let them talk," Bruno said firmly. "This isn't charity. It's protection. And Samuel adores you. You're better with him than any nanny I could hire." Her eyes filled again with tears. "But you don't even know me." "I know enough," he said softly. "I know you're honest, hardworking, stronger than you realize. That's all I need to know." Something in his steady gaze broke through her fear. Slowly she nodded. "All right. But just until I figure things out." Bruno smiled faintly. "For as long as you need." And so a new chapter began. Carolina moved into the small room near the kitchen. Officially part of the household. In the days that followed, she did more than clean. She cooked meals, read bedtime stories to Samuel, even filled the house with laughter it hadn't heard in years. Samuel was overjoyed. "Daddy," he said one night, snuggled in bed, "Carolina can stay forever, right?" Bruno brushed the boy's hair back. His heart tightened at the sight of Samuel's smile. "Yes, son. As long as she wants." Standing in the hallway, watching Carolina tuck Samuel in, Bruno realized something. It wasn't just Samuel who had found comfort in her presence. He had too. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The following days unfolded with a quiet rhythm that felt almost like peace, though beneath the surface, a storm lingered. Bruno noticed it first in Samuel. The boy woke earlier, ran through the halls with energy that hadn't been there before, and whenever Carolina entered the room, his little face lit up. She was no longer just a helper in their home, she had become part of their small world. One morning, Bruno stood in the doorway to the backyard, coffee in hand, watching Samuel and Carolina play on the lawn. Samuel was chasing her with a plastic sword, and she laughed, running across the grass with her skirt fluttering around her ankles. It was a sound Bruno hadn't heard in his house since his wife Marcella had passed away 2 years before. A laugh filled with warmth, not forced cheer. For months, their home had been silent, almost hollow. Now it felt alive again. And Bruno knew it was because of her. But even in these moments of joy, shadows clung to Carolina's face. Sometimes she froze at the sound of the doorbell, or jumped when the phone rang. At night, Bruno could hear her pacing in the small guest room, unable to sleep. One evening, after Samuel was tucked into bed, Bruno found her sitting on the back porch, staring up at the stars. She wrapped her sweater tight around her shoulders. "Can I ask you something?" he said, lowering himself into the chair beside her. She glanced at him warily. "Of course. Why did you stay with him so long?" His voice was gentle, not accusatory. Her silence stretched into the night. Finally she whispered, "Because he convinced me I was worthless. That no one would ever want me. That I couldn't survive without him." Her voice shook, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. When you hear that every day for years, you start to believe it. "I was 18 when we married. I didn't know anything else." Bruno clenched his jaw, rage simmering beneath his calm. "You know it's not true, don't you? You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You escaped him. You're rebuilding your life from nothing. That's not weakness, that's strength." Carolina blinked at him, surprised. For years she had carried shame, believing she was small and broken. But here was a man looking at her as if she was someone extraordinary. "Do you really believe that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Bruno leaned forward, his eyes steady. "I know it," her breath caught. Something shifted between them, a fragile thread of trust, maybe even something deeper. She opened her mouth to speak, but before words came, he reached out gently, pressing a kiss to her forehead. A soft, protective gesture. "Good night, Carolina," he murmured. She closed her eyes, holding back tears. "Good night, Bruno." But what neither of them realized was that someone else had seen. From the upstairs window, Inez watched, her lips tightening into a thin line. She had never approved of Carolina, and this only deepened her disapproval. Inez had always believed Bruno should remarry a woman of status, someone who matched the family's reputation. A housekeeper turned protector didn't fit into that picture. The next morning, Inez cornered Carolina in the kitchen while Samuel was at school and Bruno at work. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes sharp. "My dear," she began, pouring herself tea, "we need to talk about Bruno." Carolina turned from the sink, her stomach tightening. "What about him?" Inez sighed theatrically, as though the words pained her. "I know you two are close, but you should know the truth. Bruno still wears Marcella's wedding ring." Carolina's heart skipped. She had noticed the gold band but never questioned it. "And in his room," Inez continued, "the photos of her are everywhere. He visits her grave every week, hours at a time. Do you think a man like that is ready to love again?" Carolina swallowed hard, images flashing in her mind, Bruno kissing her forehead, Bruno telling her she was strong. Had she been reading too much into his kindness? I don't know," she whispered. "My dear," Inez said, her voice soft but laced with poison. "I like you, truly I do. But don't confuse gratitude with love. Bruno appreciates what you've done for Samuel. That doesn't mean his heart belongs to you." Carolina felt a cold weight settle in her chest. She nodded faintly, though her eyes blurred with unshed tears. That evening, when Bruno invited her to watch a movie with him and Samuel, she forced a smile and shook her head. "I'm tired. I have chores to finish." Bruno frowned, sensing a change in her. Later, when they were alone, he asked, "Did something happen? You're different tonight." She hesitated, then blurted the question burning in her chest. "Bruno, do you still love Marcella?" He froze. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you still wear her ring. Because her pictures are everywhere. Because maybe your heart still belongs to her." Bruno sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll always honor her memory. But that doesn't mean I can't make room in my heart for someone else. For you." Carolina's eyes widened. But fear, doubt, and Inez's words weighed her down. She shook her head, her voice barely audible. "We should keep things professional. You're my employer. That's all. Bruno's chest ached at the distance in her tone. He wanted to argue, to reach for her, but he held back. If that was what she wanted, he would respect it. But in the quiet shadows of the house, Ines allowed herself a satisfied smile. Step one of her plan was complete. The following day, the phone rang. Carolina answered. A woman's voice purred on the other end. "Hi, sweetheart." "Tell Bruno Patricia called." Carolina froze. "I'm sorry, who?" "Oh, he didn't tell you about me?" "Just let him know I called." "He has my number." The line went dead. Carolina's hand trembled as she set the receiver down. Patricia? Another woman? The way the voice had spoken, so intimate, so casual, it twisted her stomach with jealousy and pain. That evening, when Bruno returned home, she confronted him. "Who is Patricia?" He looked baffled. "Patricia? I don't know any Patricia. She called today. Said you know her." Bruno pulled out his phone, flipping through his contacts. "Look, there's no Patricia here. Whoever she is, she's lying." Carolina wanted to believe him, but the doubt remained like a splinter in her heart. And doubt was exactly what Ines wanted, because the next day, when Carolina went to tidy Bruno's closet, she found it. A piece of lingerie, a red lace underwear, hanging right in front of his pressed shirts. Not hers, not Marcella's, someone else's. Her heart stopped. Rage and humiliation washed over her in waves. She clutched the fabric, tears burning her eyes out at that moment. Bruno walked in. "Carolina? What are you doing?" She spun on him, throwing the lingerie into his chest. "Your mother-in-law was right. You still love Marcella, and now you have another woman too." "I was so stupid." Bruno stared at the item in his hands, stunned. "I've never seen this in my life." "Carolina, I swear, stop lying." She cried. "I believed you. I trusted you. And now this?" She shoved past him, her voice breaking. "I don't belong in your world. I don't belong here at all." Bruno tried to stop her, but her tears blinded her, her pain too raw. She packed her bag that night, ignoring his pleas, ignoring Samuel's cries of, "Don't go, Carolina." By dawn, she was gone. And for the second time in her young life, Carolina was running. But unlike before, this time she wasn't running from an abuser. This time, she was running from love. Carolina left the house at dawn, her small suitcase clutched tightly in her hand. The streets were quiet, covered in a thin mist that made everything look lonelier. She didn't dare look back. Each step away from Bruno's home felt like tearing a piece of her heart out, but the humiliation of what she had found in his closet burned too deeply. "How could I have been so foolish?" she thought. "How could I believe a man like him would ever want someone like me?" She arrived at her mother's modest home in a working-class neighborhood of Hartford. The little house smelled faintly of old wood and chamomile tea. When her mother, Mrs. Need, opened the door, she saw the tears on her daughter's face and knew something was wrong. "Carolina, Corita. What happened?" "I thought you were safe now." Carolina collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing. "It all fell apart, Mama. I thought maybe Bruno cared for me. But it was all a lie. I found another woman's underwear in his closet. And a woman named Patricia called the house, saying she was close to him. He betrayed me." Her mother stroked her hair gently, leading her inside. "Oh, Philha, that doesn't sound like the Bruno you told me about." "Are you sure?" Carolina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I saw it with my own eyes. And I heard the woman's voice. How could that be a mistake?" Mrs. Need's brow furrowed. "It could be someone trying to cause trouble. Remember, not everyone wants your happiness. Sometimes people will do anything to poison what is good." But Carolina shook her head. "No, Mama, I can't keep making excuses. It hurts too much." Meanwhile, back at Bruno's house, Samuel sat at the breakfast table refusing to eat. His little cheeks were pale, his eyes swollen from crying all night. "Son, please," Bruno said softly, kneeling beside him. "You have to eat." "I don't want to," Samuel whispered. "Not unless Carolina comes back." Bruno's heart twisted. He had tried calling Carolina's phone, but she didn't answer. He had even driven to her apartment, only to find it empty. He knew she must have gone to her mother's, but she refused to speak to him. The house felt emptier than ever. Every corner reminded him of her presence, the sound of her laughter echoing faintly in his memory, the scent of her cooking that lingered in the kitchen, the warmth she had brought to Samuel's life. Without her, silence had returned, heavy and suffocating. That evening, Bruno couldn't take it anymore. He drove across town, through streets that grew rougher and darker the further he went, until he reached the small house where Carolina's mother lived. He stood at the gate, calling softly, "Carolina." The curtain shifted, and Carolina appeared at the window. Her face was pale, one cheek slightly bruised from crying and exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice flat. "I need to talk to you. Samuel hasn't eaten in 3 days. He's wasting away without you." Her eyes flickered with pain, but she shook her head. "He'll be fine. He has you." "No," Bruno said firmly, his voice breaking. "He needs you. And so do I." She shook her head again, her grip tightening on the window frame. "Stop, don't say that. I can't. I can't believe you anymore." Bruno's chest ached. "Carolina, someone planted that lingerie. Someone made that phone call. Don't you see? They want to tear us apart." She bit her lip, her eyes filling. "Even if that's true, Bruno, I don't belong in your world. I was stupid to think I did." Before he could answer, her mother appeared, stepping behind her. "Bruno, it's late. Please, let her rest." Defeated, Bruno nodded slowly. "I'll leave. But know this, I won't stop until I prove the truth." As he walked back to his car, a pair of eyes followed him from the shadows across the street. Ethan. He'd been watching Carolina's house for days, waiting for his chance. Seeing Bruno leave fueled his rage. "Good," he muttered under his breath. "The rich boy can't protect her here. She's mine again." The very next afternoon, Carolina had to run to the pharmacy for her mother's medication. She tried to stay alert, glancing over her shoulder as she walked to the bus stop. But when she reached the corner, a rough hand grabbed her arm. Double quotes. "Hello, sweetheart." A low, mocking voice whispered. Her blood ran cold. "Ethan." He yanked her toward the side of a building, his grip like iron on her bruised arm. "You thought you could hide from me with that rich man? You're mine, Carolina. Always were, always will be. Let me go." She cried, struggling. "Shut up," he growled, slamming her against the wall. "You humiliated me. Ran off like a coward. Hid behind another man. You think you can embarrass me?" He slapped her hard across the face. The sting burned her cheek, and tears filled her eyes. "Stop, please." He shoved her to the ground, kicking her arm. Pain shot through her body. "Next time will be worse," he hissed. "Much worse." A woman passing by screamed, "Hey! Leave her alone." Ethan cursed, bolting into the street before anyone could grab him. Shaking, Carolina staggered home, clutching her aching arm. Her mother gasped when she saw the bruises, the swollen cheek. "Oh, Philha, what did that monster do now?" "He found me, Mama," Carolina sobbed. "He said next time would be worse." They held each other and wept, unsure of where to turn. That evening, Bruno showed up again. When he saw Carolina's injuries, his world nearly collapsed. "My God, what happened?" Her mother answered for her. Her ex-husband. He attacked her at the bus stop. Bruno's fists clenched, fury blazing in his eyes. "That's it. You're both coming with me. Tonight, no arguments." Carolina tried to protest. "Bruno, I can't." "You can. And you will. I won't let him hurt you again." The conviction in his voice left no room for refusal. Exhausted and terrified, she finally nodded on the drive back to Bruno's house. Samuel sat in the backseat beside Carolina. The moment he saw her, his little arms wrapped around her waist. "I knew you'd come back. I missed you so much." Carolina stroked his hair, tears spilling silently down her face. "I missed you too, sweetheart." From the driver's seat, Bruno glanced at them in the mirror. He made a silent vow. Whoever is trying to destroy this family, Ethan, Inez, anyone, they will not win. "I'll protect her, no matter what it takes." But while his heart burned with determination, somewhere deep in the city, Ethan was plotting his next move. And he wasn't the only one. Inez, too, sat in her room that night, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her schemes had failed once, but she wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The next few weeks reshaped the rhythm of everyone's life inside Bruno's house. Carolina and her mother, Mrs. Need, now lived under his roof. The guest rooms were filled, the kitchen always smelled of fresh meals, and Samuel seemed happier than he had been in years. But beneath the surface of this fragile happiness, tension coiled tight like a rope stretched to its limit. Carolina tried to smile, to act as though everything was normal. But the bruises on her arm and the memory of Ethan's voice, whispering threats in her ear, never left her mind. Some nights she woke up trembling, her hands gripping the sheets, afraid he might break into the house. And every time, Bruno was there, standing in the doorway, assuring her, "You're safe. I promise." For Samuel, having Carolina back was like having the sun rise again. He clung to her side constantly, begging for bedtime stories, leaving his crayons scattered across the kitchen table as he drew pictures of the three of them together, always a family, always smiling. One night he showed her a new drawing, a stick figure Bruno, a stick figure Carolina, and himself in between, holding both their hands. Beneath, in messy block letters, he had written, "Mom and Dad." The sight nearly broke her. She hugged him so tightly he laughed. "Careful, Carolina. You'll squeeze me like a pancake." But as sweet as those moments were, another presence lurked in the house. Inez. Inez had not forgiven the humiliation of being confronted in front of the family. She hated the way Bruno defended Carolina, the way Samuel adored her, the way this woman, this outsider, had slipped so easily into their lives. To Inez, it felt like a theft. Marcella, her late daughter, had been Bruno's wife, Samuel's mother. And now Carolina stood in her place. Inez watched from the shadows of the hallway when Bruno leaned a little too close to Carolina at dinner. She clenched her jaw when Samuel called her mom by accident one afternoon. Every laugh, every glance between them made her blood boil. But she wasn't done fighting. No, if she couldn't remove Carolina with whispers and lies, she would find another way. One morning, Bruno left early for a meeting, and Samuel was at school. Carolina stood in the kitchen with her hands in the sink, washing dishes, when Inez appeared. Her voice was smooth as honey, but her words were poison. "Carolina, dear," she began, setting her teacup on the counter, "don't you think you're getting too comfortable here?" Carolina's stomach tightened. She turned slowly. "What do you mean?" Inez smiled coldly. "Look around you. This is not your world. This house, this family, this life, it doesn't belong to you. You're a guest, nothing more." Carolina swallowed, her heart racing. "I never asked for anything, Mrs. Inez. I only stayed because Bruno insisted. Because of Ethan." Inez leaned closer, her eyes sharp as knives. "Don't fool yourself. Men like Bruno, men with money and position, they don't fall in love with women like you. They might feel pity, gratitude, even attraction. But love? No. You'll always be beneath him." Carolina gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. She wanted to shout, to fight back, but the years of abuse had left scars deeper than the bruises on her skin. Words like Inez's cut too easily. because part of her feared they were true. Before she could answer, Samuel burst through the door, waving a paper from school. "Carolina, I got a star on my spelling test." Her face lit up instantly. "Oh, Samuel, I'm so proud of you." She hugged him, her earlier pain hidden behind her smile. Ines watched, seething. The boy's love for Carolina was growing, rooting deeper every day. And she knew, if she didn't act soon, Bruno might propose. Then Carolina would no longer just be a guest, she'd be family. That night, Bruno returned home with heavy news. He had hired a private investigator to trace the mysterious phone call from Patricia. The report confirmed what he already suspected. The phone had been purchased with false identification. A deliberate setup. He shared the findings with Carolina as they sat quietly on the back porch. "It means someone inside this house, someone close to us, is trying to destroy us," Bruno said, his eyes scanning hers. Carolina's throat tightened. "You think it's Ines?" Bruno hesitated. "I don't want to believe it. But who else had access? Who else would benefit from tearing us apart?" The air grew heavy with the unspoken truth. "We need proof," Bruno said at last. "If we confront her without it, she'd deny everything. But if we catch her, if we expose her lies in front of everyone, she'll never be able to hurt us again." Carolina nodded slowly, though fear twisted in her stomach. "And what about Ethan? He's still out there, watching, waiting." Bruno reached for her hand, his touch firm, grounding. "The police are after him. He won't slip through forever. But until then, you're safe here. I'll protect you, Carolina. With my life, if I have to." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time not of sorrow. For the first time in years, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. 2 nights later, the storm came. It was late. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rumbling across the sky. Samuel had finally fallen asleep, curled under his blankets. Carolina sat in her room, brushing out her long dark hair when she heard it. A sound. A faint scrape like wood against metal. Her heart froze. Slowly, she set the brush down, straining her ears. Then she heard it again. From downstairs. From the back door. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she slipped into the hallway. She wanted to wake Bruno, but something in her gut told her there wasn't time. She crept down the stairs, every step echoing too loud. At the bottom, lightning flashed through the glass doors of the kitchen. And there he was. Ethan. Soaked to the bone, his eyes wild, a knife glinting in his hand. He had broken the lock, slipped inside like a shadow. "Carolina," he whispered, his smile twisted, his voice hoarse. "Miss me?" Her breath caught in her throat. She backed away, but he stepped closer, dragging the knife across the countertop, the screech of metal on stone filling the room. "You thought you could hide behind that rich fool? Thought you could run? You're mine. Always mine." Carolina's body trembled, but she forced her voice steady. "Stay away from me, Ethan. The police are looking for you." "If you touch me again," he laughed, the sound chilling. "The police? They can't keep me away. Not from you." And then from behind her, another voice rang out, strong and unyielding. "Step away from her." Bruno stood at the doorway, his frame tall, his eyes blazing with fury. Ethan turned, smirking. "There he is. The hero." Bruno took a step forward, his voice low, dangerous. "You come near her again, you'll regret it." The storm outside howled, thunder crashing like drums of war. In that moment, the house was no longer just a home, it was a battlefield, and Bruno knew this was only the beginning. The storm outside roared louder as lightning streaked across the night sky, flooding the kitchen with flashes of white light. Rain hammered against the windows, wind howled through the trees, but inside the house, the storm between Bruno and Ethan was far greater. Ethan stood with his knife glinting, his hair dripping from the rain, his grin mocking. "So here we are. The rich man, the poor girl, and the husband she thought she could run from. Tell me, Carolina, did you really think you'd be safe in his mansion? Carolina pressed herself against the wall, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She wanted to scream, to cry, but her voice caught in her throat. Her whole body shook with fear, though she forced herself to stay upright. Samuel was upstairs, sleeping. He couldn't wake up to this nightmare. She had to be strong. Bruno moved slowly between Ethan and Carolina, shielding her with his body. You have no right to be here. Put the knife down and leave, or I'll make sure you never step foot near her again. Ethan laughed, a hollow, vicious sound. You? Make sure? You don't know me, rich boy. I grew up where men like you don't last 2 minutes. You think your muscles, your fancy car, your big house scare me. You're soft. You don't know what it means to fight for survival. I know enough, Bruno said calmly, though his fists tightened. I know what you are. A coward who beats women because he can't control himself. For the first time, Ethan's smile faltered. Anger flickered across his face, and he raised the knife slightly higher. Careful what you say, or I'll carve those words right out of your mouth. Carolina gasped, tears streaking her cheeks. Please, Ethan, stop this. You don't have to do this. Just leave. Shut up. He snapped, his eyes burning into her. You're my wife. Mine. Till death do us part, you remember those words? You don't get to erase me, Carolina. Bruno stepped forward, his tone sharp. She's not your wife anymore. You lost that right the first time you laid a hand on her. She's free now. And if you want to get to her, you'll have to go through me. The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Ethan lunged forward, knife raised. Bruno grabbed his wrist just in time, the blade glancing inches from his side. The two men crashed into the table, sending dishes clattering to the floor. Carolina screamed, rushing forward instinctively, but Bruno shouted, "Stay back!" He twisted, slamming Ethan's arm against the edge of the counter. The knife clattered to the ground, spinning across the tile, but Ethan was wiry, fast. He slammed his head into Bruno's chest, knocking him back a step, then dove for the knife again. Bruno grabbed his collar, yanking him up, the two grappling violently in the middle of the kitchen. Chairs toppled, glass shattered, the storm outside echoing the chaos within. Carolina ran to the phone, hands trembling, dialing 911. "Please, please send help," she cried. "There's a man in the house, he has a knife." Ethan heard her, his eyes wild. "You called the cops?" he roared. With a sudden shove, he slammed Bruno into the wall and charged toward her. Carolina froze, the receiver slipping from her hands. Ethan's eyes were bloodshot, veins bulging at his neck. "You think you can betray me like this?" But before he could reach her, Bruno barreled into him from behind, tackling him to the floor. They rolled across the tiles, fists flying, grunts and curses filling the room. Ethan clawed and scratched like a madman, but Bruno's strength was greater, his fury fueled by something deeper than anger, love. Protection, the will to shield Carolina at all costs. Finally, Bruno pinned him, forearm pressed against Ethan's throat. "It's over," Bruno growled, his voice shaking with rage. But Ethan only spat in his face, choking out the words. "This isn't over." Red and blue lights flashed outside the windows. The sound of sirens cut through the storm. A heavy pounding shook the front door. "Police, open up." Carolina rushed forward, fumbling with the locks, pulling the door wide. Two officers burst inside, weapons drawn. They found Bruno pinning Ethan to the floor, the knife lying a few feet away, hands where we can see them. One officer barked. Bruno immediately raised his hands, stepping back. Ethan, gasping for air, tried to scramble up, but the officers were faster. They slammed him face first into the tile, cuffing his wrists behind his back. "You're under arrest for assault, unlawful entry, and violation of a restraining order," one officer recited. Ethan snarled, struggling in the cuffs. You can't keep me from her. She's mine." Carolina clutched her bruised arm, tears streaming freely now. "No, Ethan, I'm not yours. Not now, not ever again." The officers dragged him up, hauling him toward the door. "Carolina!" Ethan shouted, his voice echoing through the storm. "This isn't over. When I get out, I'll find you. You can't hide from me." The door slammed shut behind them, leaving only the sound of the rain and Carolina's quiet sobs. Bruno rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, trembling uncontrollably. "It's over," he whispered fiercely. "He's gone. You're safe now." But deep inside, Carolina wasn't sure. His words still echoed in her ears. "This isn't over." Hours later, after the police finished taking statements and left, the house was quiet again. Samuel, miraculously, had slept through the entire ordeal, his innocence untouched. Bruno tucked him in again, brushing a hand over his son's hair, silently thanking God for that small mercy. When Bruno returned to the living room, he found Carolina sitting on the couch, a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She looked so small, so fragile. Yet in her eyes was a flicker of steel. She had survived again. He sat beside her, his hand finding hers. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. I swear, Carolina, I'll never let him hurt you again." She turned to him, her voice breaking. "Why do you keep risking yourself for me, Bruno? Why? You could have died tonight." He didn't hesitate. "Because you matter. To Samuel. To me. You've brought light back into this house. You've given us hope again. I'd risk everything for you." Carolina's lips trembled. For so long, she had believed she was worthless, unlovable. And here was a man telling her the opposite with every word, every action. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they weren't from fear. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. "You'll never have to find out," Bruno replied, pulling her close. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, the thunder rolling away into the distance. But in their hearts, both Bruno and Carolina knew the true storm was not yet over. Ethan's shadow still lingered, and Inez's schemes had not yet been revealed, and until every threat was gone, peace would remain fragile, trembling like a candle in the wind. The days following Ethan's arrest were a blur of tension and fragile calm. Police patrol cars occasionally passed by the house, their presence meant to reassure. Yet every time Carolina heard the sound of sirens in the distance, her body stiffened. She couldn't erase Ethan's last words from her mind. "This isn't over. I'll find you." Those words clung to her like a shadow, even when sunlight streamed through the windows. Bruno, on the other hand, grew more vigilant than ever. He installed additional locks on the doors, cameras at the gates, and motion lights around the property. He wanted to turn the house into a fortress. Each night before bed, he made rounds like a guard, checking every window, every door, as if sheer vigilance could shield the people he loved from the darkness outside. Samuel noticed too. Though young, he sensed the shift. "Daddy, are the police going to take the bad man far away?" he asked one evening as Carolina tucked him in. "Yes, son," Bruno answered, his voice steady but his heart uncertain. "The bad man won't come back here again," Samuel frowned. "Because if he does, I'll protect Carolina too. I'll use my superhero powers." He held up a crayon drawing of himself wearing a cape, standing tall beside Carolina and Bruno. Across the top he had scribbled, "The strongest family." Carolina hugged him, tears in her eyes. "And you already do protect me, sweetheart. You give me courage every day." But within the walls of the house, another storm brewed, this one more insidious. Inez had grown quieter after Ethan's intrusion, her sharp words dulled for a while, her presence subdued. Yet behind her eyes, resentment simmered hotter than ever. She hated how much closer Bruno and Carolina had grown after the attack. Hated how Samuel clung to Carolina like a true mother. hated that Bruno seemed more protective of her than anyone else. Ines couldn't stand the thought of Carolina replacing Marcella in pro. Bruno seemed more protective of her than anyone else. Ines couldn't stand the thought of Carolina replacing Marcella in Frosa, more protective of her than anyone else. Bruno's life or in Samuel's heart. She told herself she was defending her late daughter's memory, but deep inside, envy twisted her. She had controlled this family for years. Now that control was slipping away. One evening, while Bruno was still at work, Ines found Carolina folding laundry in the guest room. She closed the door quietly and spoke in a low voice. "You think last night proved something, don't you?" Carolina looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" "That Bruno will always protect you. That Samuel loves you like a mother. That you belong here." Ines stepped closer, her face hard. "But let me tell you the truth, you don't. You're nothing but a temporary distraction. The moment Bruno realizes how you're ruining his reputation, he'll cast you aside. And where will you go then? Back to the streets? Back to that violent husband of yours?" Carolina's breath caught. "Why are you saying this? After everything Ethan did, after what we've been through, I'm saying this because I see clearer than you," Ines hissed. "You've bewitched my grandson and manipulated Bruno with your sob stories. But you don't belong in this house. And mark my words, before long, everyone will see it too." Carolina stood frozen, her hands trembling around the stack of folded shirts. She wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that she hadn't manipulated anyone, that all she ever wanted was peace. But her voice failed her. Ines smirked at her silence, satisfied with the damage her words had done. That night, Bruno returned to find Carolina distant, her eyes clouded with doubt. After Samuel was asleep, he sat beside her on the porch, the cool night air carrying the smell of wet grass. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Nothing. Just tired." "Carolina," he pressed gently, "don't hide from me. Talk to me." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Bruno, I don't know if I belong here. Maybe Ines is right. Maybe I'm just a problem. A burden." Bruno felt anger flare, though not at her. He knew instantly whose voice had poisoned her thoughts. "Listen to me. You are not a burden. You are the best thing that's happened to this house since Marcella passed. You've brought light back into Samuel's life, back into mine. Don't you ever doubt that." Carolina looked at him, searching his face for any trace of deception, and found none. His words, steady and unflinching, broke through the fog of Ines's cruelty. She let out a sob and leaned into him. Bruno wrapped his arms around her, pressing his lips to her hair. "You belong here, Carolina. Not as a guest. As family." Her heart pounded. Could he mean it, truly? But before either could say more, the phone rang inside. Bruno went to answer, and Carolina followed. The voice on the other end was smooth, feminine, familiar. "Tell Bruno that Patricia called." Carolina's stomach dropped. Again, she snatched the phone, her voice sharp. "Who are you? Why do you keep calling?" The line went dead. Bruno slammed the receiver down, fury in his eyes. "It's her again. Whoever she is, she's working with someone. And I'll find out who." Carolina whispered, almost to herself. "It has to be Ines." Bruno didn't deny it this time. His jaw tightened. "If it is, I'll expose her. I'll show everyone who she really is." The next day, Bruno met with the private investigator again. The man slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, bank records, even a recording. "She paid a woman to pose as your mistress," the investigator explained. Same voice that called the house. "And the lingerie? That was planted. I traced the purchase. It was made on Ines's credit card, though under a different name. But the clerk remembered her face." Bruno closed the folder, rage boiling in his veins. Ines had gone too far. She hadn't just tried to manipulate him, she had tried to destroy Carolina's hope, Samuel's trust, the family they were building. He made a decision then. No more silence. No more patience. That evening, Bruno called a family gathering at the house. The dining room buzzed with voices, relatives sitting around the long wooden table, curious about the urgency of his message. Ines sat near the end, feigning innocence, though suspicion flickered in her eyes. When everyone was settled, Bruno stood, his voice steady but commanding. "Tonight, I need to show you the truth. Someone in this family has tried to tear us apart with lies, with cruelty, with manipulation. And it's time you all see who it is." The room fell silent. Ines shifted uncomfortably. "Bruno, what are you talking about?" "This is ridiculous." Bruno held up his hand. "Let's listen first." He pulled out a small recorder and pressed play. The room filled with Ines's voice. "She's nothing but a poor girl after your money. Women like her don't belong in this family. I'll make sure Bruno sees the truth, even if I have to invent it." Gasps rippled around the table. Carolina sat frozen, her face pale. Samuel clung to her side, not fully understanding, but sensing the tension. Ines's face drained of color. That was taken out of context. She snapped, but Bruno wasn't done. He pulled out a receipt, holding it up. "This is the payment you made to Patricia, the woman who called pretending to be my lover. The one you hired to destroy Carolina." Whispers filled the room, harsh and disbelieving. "How could you?" someone muttered. Ines's mask cracked. Her voice rose, shrill. "I did it for Marcella. For Samuel. To protect this family." Bruno's voice thundered back, louder than the storm outside. "You didn't protect anyone. You tried to destroy us. And I won't let you hurt Carolina or Samuel ever again." The room erupted into chaos. Family members scolding, condemning, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Carolina sat stunned, her hand clutching Samuel's. For the first time, she wasn't the one on trial. The truth was out. But outside, beyond the brightly lit windows, another figure lurked in the shadows. Ethan, free on bail, watching, waiting. His hatred sharper than the knife he once held. "This family thinks they won," he muttered to himself, rain dripping from his hair. "But they haven't seen the end. Not yet." And with that, he disappeared into the night, plotting his return. The night of the family gathering had changed everything. Carolina sat quietly on the edge of her bed afterward, her hands pressed together, trembling not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming weight of truth finally coming to light. For so long, she had been doubted, accused, and manipulated. But now, in front of everyone, Bruno had proven her innocence and revealed the malice of Ines. Still, the victory was bittersweet. Samuel had cried when he realized his grandmother had lied. He had asked Carolina in a trembling voice, "Why would Grandma Ines do that? Didn't she love us?" Carolina hadn't known how to answer. Bruno had held him close, whispering that sometimes people hurt others out of jealousy, even when they claim it's out of love. That night, after Samuel had finally fallen asleep, Bruno and Carolina sat together in the quiet living room. The rain had stopped, leaving the air outside crisp, cool, and heavy with the smell of wet earth. Bruno turned to her, his face etched with determination. "She won't hurt us again. I've spoken to my lawyer. Ines will face charges for slander and fraud. She'll have to answer for what she's done." Carolina nodded, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you. For believing me. For fighting for me." He reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I didn't just fight for you, Carolina. I fought for us. For this family." Her breath caught, her eyes stinging with tears. She had never imagined a man could speak to her this way, like she was worth something, like she was more than just a survivor of pain. The following week brought a fragile sense of peace. With Ines gone and facing legal consequences, the house felt freer, lighter. Samuel's laughter returned, echoing through the halls as he played with his toys and clung to Carolina with all the innocent devotion of a child who finally felt whole again. But the shadow of Ethan still lingered. His face appeared in Carolina's nightmares, his voice whispering threats in the dark. And though Bruno assured her that Ethan would be locked away for years, she couldn't shake the memory of his glare, the venom in his words. This isn't over. And Carolina was right to be afraid, because Ethan had found a way back. Released on bail through the help of old contacts from his gang days, Ethan roamed the city streets like a wounded predator. He drank too much, slept too little, but his mind never wavered from one thought: reclaiming what he believed was his. He followed Bruno's house from a distance, watching the routines, memorizing the patterns. He saw Samuel leave for school in the mornings. He saw Bruno's car pull away for work. He saw Carolina tending the garden in the afternoons, her face lit by the sun. Every sight fueled his obsession. "They think they're safe," he muttered, crouched in the shadows of a nearby alley. "They think he can protect her. But no one protects her from me." One night, he scribbled on a scrap of paper, the words jagged and furious: "Carolina, if I can't have you, no one will. Watch your back." He slipped it into the mailbox, grinning as he walked away into the dark. The next morning, Carolina was the one who found it. Her hands shook violently as she read the note, her knees nearly giving out. Bruno caught her just in time, snatching the paper and reading it himself. His face hardened, rage blazing in his eyes. "That's it," he growled. "I'm done waiting for the system to catch him. I'll make sure he never comes near you again." Carolina's voice cracked. "Bruno, please. Don't do anything reckless. That's what he wants. To drag you into his darkness." Bruno cupped her face gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Then tell me what I'm supposed to do. How do I sit back when he keeps threatening you? When I know he's watching us?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Stay with me. Stay with Samuel. That's all I ask." He pulled her into his arms, pressing his lips to her hair. "I'll stay. I'll protect you both. Always." Days passed, tense and heavy. Carolina jumped at every noise, every shadow. Samuel sensed the unease, clinging to her more than ever. Bruno tried to keep calm, but his anger simmered dangerously. Then, one Thursday evening, Bruno made a decision. He called the family again, his brothers, his cousins, even the lawyer, inviting them for a gathering at his home. Carolina looked at him in confusion. "Why now?" she asked. "Because it's time to end this," Bruno said firmly. "Enos isn't the only threat. Ethan is still out there, and he needs to know he can't win. We'll face him together, as a family. And I've arranged something with the police. If he shows up, they'll be ready." Carolina's stomach twisted with fear. What if he does more than show up? What if he... Bruno cut her off with a kiss to her forehead. "Then he'll finally face the consequences. For good." The night of the gathering arrived. The house was full again, family members chatting nervously, children running in the yard, food spread across the long dining table. Carolina tried to hide her unease, but her eyes kept darting toward the windows, expecting a shadow to appear at any moment. Samuel tugged on her hand. "Don't be scared, Carolina. Daddy said tonight we're stronger than ever." She smiled faintly, kneeling to kiss his forehead. "You're right, sweetheart." But outside, beyond the fence, Ethan crouched in the darkness, watching. His knife gleamed under the moonlight. His heart pounded with anticipation. "They think they won," he whispered. "But tonight they'll see who I really am." Slowly, silently, he climbed the fence, slipping into the backyard, while laughter echoed from inside. And in that moment, the fragile peace of Bruno's home balanced on a knife's edge, because the final confrontation, the moment that would decide their future, was about to begin.